Nice to welcome everybody to the Economic Development Committee of the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce. Today we are talking about redistricting. And I think with that, Lori, are you going to kick that off, or Michelle?
I think I'll jump in.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Bigelow. I'm the city clerk and the interim communications director for the city of Morgan Hill. Dr. Justin Levitt with National Demographics Corporation is here with me this morning. I will provide a brief introduction and then turn it over to Justin to share a little bit more detail and nuance about the process. And then we, I think, can take questions. So I'll start off by saying that, the redistricting process is a process that typically takes place for cities that have districts, which we do. We have 4 council districts, and they take place after the 10-year census. So once we get back the census numbers every 10 years, we need to reevaluate our council districts to see if they need to be changed. And so depending on how our census numbers come in and where growth takes place in the city, sometimes there will be drastic changes needed and sometimes they're pretty minimal. In our particular case, we have 4 council districts, and one of those districts particularly really is no longer legal. It does not meet the legal requirements. It met those requirements when it was put in place about 5 years ago, but the laws have changed pretty significantly. And because that district is no longer compact or contiguous, we're going to have to evaluate as a community what we want that district to look like. And a part of the redistricting process that's really important is getting our community engaged and participating. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. First is through helping us identify communities of interest. And so those can be groups of people that share a common social or economic interest, live in a geographically definable area, or have other interests that we as the city may not be aware of. Sometimes they can be groups of senior citizens, college students, maybe bicycle enthusiasts, families with young children. And as I've had this conversation with folks throughout the community, people seem to really be having a hard time with this piece. I think because Morgan Hill is so nicely spread out and intermixed, and we don't have at least the people have shared with me at this point, really super definable communities of interest. We definitely have bicycle enthusiasts, we definitely have senior communities and families with younger children, but they tend to be pretty well spread out throughout the community. So that's one way. The second way is by submitting draft maps. And right now we just got news that we have our online mapping tool, and I'll show you in a second the paper mapping tool. But we really would love for our community to take some time and look at the mapping tools and draw what they think the 4 districts, the 4 city council districts for Morgan Hill should look like. And we are happy to sit down and help with that. We understand that it feels a little daunting, I think. And some of the feedback I've been getting is people say, gosh, that feels like a lot, feels overwhelming. I'm not sure where to start. And you can start by checking out our website. You can email me or call me. And if you are interested and don't know where to start, swing by City Hall, set up an appointment with me, and I'm happy to sit down and we can go through the tools. So I will just really quickly share my screen, Lori, and bring up the paper mapping tool, and then I'll turn it over to Justin. So I would say the easiest to use tool that we have right now is this paper mapping tool. And I'm going to zoom in a little. And essentially what folks can do is either on Adobe, like I am right now, or a paper, literally a piece of paper with a pen or a marker, folks can identify what they think districts should look like. And so I might come in here and say, okay, I think that I want to draw district C this way. And an important thing to note as we're putting these districts together is that they need to have near equal populations. And NDC has been fantastic in this tool. They outline it down here for us, what is needed. So each district needs to have close to 11,400 people. And so what this mapping tool also has is each of these numbers is the population in that tract. And so then you can pull out your calculator and add it up and see if you're close to this 11,392 number. And I like this tool because on Adobe, at least I can redraw my lines. You can even just do it with a pencil and kind of see where you land. but a very simple way to submit maps. You can take a picture of it and email it to me at this address below. And I'll put it in the chat when I'm done here, redistricting 2021 at morganhill.ci.gov. And this QR code will take you to this map online. So if you want to try it a few times and submit a few different versions, you absolutely can. With that, I will stop sharing and turn it over to Dr. Justin Levitt.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I'm just going to be talking about some of our other tools as well. I'm happy to also answer any questions here this morning and go through anything in more detail if you'd like. I think did a great overview of kind of what we're doing here today. I'll just add that this process is required once every 10 years following the decennial census. And so, and of course, we're operating under some new state laws that govern the process that have changed since the city went to district elections a few years ago. Most importantly, some of the criteria that we're required to use, and let me just share my screen here. Some of the criteria that we are required to use in the process that is different from 10 years ago, or not 10 years ago, I guess I should say, just 3 or 4 years ago, is that districts are required to be contiguous, which means that they're required to be one solid or one continuous piece, and all parts of the district must touch each other. And currently, one of the city council districts is not contiguous according to this new state definition. So if we look at District D, it doesn't meet this state requirement for contiguousness. It actually is 3 separate pieces because the areas east of the 101 freeway are not connected other than by unincorporated land. In the future, the city could change that if it wanted to annex it, but right now, without an annexation connecting those regions, that district will have to be broken up and joined with neighboring districts and the map will then have to be reconfigured. In addition, we do have to kind of define what some of our neighborhoods and communities of interest are. I know it's not the easiest thing to do absent something to bounce off of, but we really want to hear about the different parts of the community, different areas that share development patterns, that share history, that share commonalities, and that follow those easily identifiable boundaries, major roads, and jurisdictional boundaries, attendance areas, things that people on the ground would understand as easy divisions. And we understand that the 101 freeway was easy division of the city, very easily identifiable boundary. But because of this rank ordered nature to this list of criteria, districts have to be contiguous first before we take into account those boundaries. In addition, we're not allowed to consider or either favor or discriminate against political partisanship as part of the process. So we did want to talk a little bit about some of the tools. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go here to pull up. In addition to the paper kits, one of the new tools that we have available and that we hope that more people will take advantage of is our online redistricting tool. Essentially, in addition to, and let me just pull up the link here. I'm just going to pull up the link to Morgan Hill here. But essentially, one of the things that we hope is that to get up and running in the next day or two is an online redistricting tool that allows you to start with a blank map of the city and basically paint the districts that you live in. So this offers a much more interactive way, and it's just loading here. But as you kind of zoom into the city, what you'll be able to do is get a blank map of the city or start with the existing city council districts and can make an editable copy of the map, as I will do here. Just take a second to copy that and load it up. And once I've done that, I'll be able to start creating and modifying those city council districts. There we go. If I open that up now, go right back to where we were, you can put on the background map, which gives me all the streets and locations. By default, it starts you with the precincts, which are, you know, larger areas. But as I go into paint, I can hit the paintbrush and I can select and add, you know, an area to a particular district. And as you saw, if you click some of these areas, they look a little bit unusual in shape because some of our precincts are, you know, are drawn in a weird way because of the city's geography. If we don't want to grab the whole precinct, we can come in and select block. And if we select block, then click on that. It'll divide this area up into the blocks that make up the area, allowing us to select just the portions of that precinct that we want to add to the district. And as I go, the population increases toward that ideal population so that we can see what, as we get closer to the full value that we need for the city, for the specific, each specific district. Once you're done, either drawing your district or drawing the entire map, all you have to do is come back to the main menu under maps and then share your map. And you can send this link that you'll get to the city's redistricting website, and you can put up that share information here. You can send it to our email address or via the form on our website, and we'll be able to draw your map in to and share it with everyone, including the council at the next public hearing. And so, you know, essentially what we really want to, you know, here as we go through the process, if you want to draw your own maps, we really would love to receive them from you. Whether you use the PDF that Michelle talked about, or the online viewer, or the online tool that is coming online today or later this week. Otherwise, we would still love to hear from you at our email and or the form via the form on our website with any information about those communities of interest or neighborhoods that you want us to consider. And when we talk about neighborhoods and communities of interest, they can include business communities, business districts, as well as residential areas. So we don't want to limit it to just one specific kind of community or one specific definition of community. And I understand that actually makes it a little more difficult, because it's not as easy to saying, oh, we're only looking for the homeowners associations. We're only looking for places that were developed at the, you know, at a single moment in time. But we are actually looking for what you in your community define your own communities to be, your own neighborhoods to be. And, you know, coming from a small town, I know that it was, you know, it was harder to do it in many ways, because in a smaller town, you know, you don't have that same like geographic or time distance it takes to get from one part of the city to another. But there can still be differences between different sections of the community that, you know, people know, even if they're often reluctant to talk about some of those differences, even if it is just, you know, places on different sides of Main Street, for example, or new development areas versus older sections of the community. And by older, you may only be 20 or 30 years older, but it still may have a very different development pattern or history than a newer community. And I just throw some of these out because I want us to start thinking about this and see if anything that I say comes, you know, inspires you, or anything comes to mind when we talk about this. I know Michelle's been doing a lot of work on the ground, going out to communities throughout the city to talk to people about this. And one of the things we really hope to get going as we move into December is actually producing some draft maps that people can bounce off of. It maybe inspire you to think about these communities of interest in a more practical way, looking at some district maps. And so we hope that over the next couple of months, that having real maps or potential maps to bounce off of will help inspire some conversation as well. But I think today we just kind of wanted to have a conversation and answer your questions and kind of keep you up to date and informed about what's going on. So I know it's a little bit less formal than a presentation at the council, but I really want to make it relevant to you. So if you have any questions, I'm really happy to address them today.
So Marby.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I have two questions. And the first one, and I apologize if I'm just haven't had enough coffee yet and not quite getting it. So you said District D is the one that doesn't meet the criteria anymore because it's, did you say it's not contiguous to other areas?
Yeah, so the District D itself, and I actually can I'll put up the just the map of the district here. District D is not contiguous as it's currently drawn because it includes areas that are east of the freeway, east of 101, but that don't touch each other.
Oh, okay, I see. I get it. Okay.
And according to the new state law, all parts of the district must touch.
And it doesn't matter the fact that, it's just that part of the city limits of Morgan Hill just are drawn like this kind of weird spider and they would never touch. So that they just have to be separate then is what you're saying.
So in the short term, they all have to touch. So they have to. So for example, the northern portion of District D would have to cross at the 101 and
come around.
be connected to adjacent areas. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
In the longer term, of course, if there were any annexations or any changes to the border, then perhaps you could do something different.
Got it. And then the second question that you were showing on the tool that you could break it down within a precinct by like street by street, is that correct?
Yeah. So that's using our census blocks. And so essentially what we can think of is that each precinct or each larger area has a lot of smaller divisions within it. Sure. Essentially, those are census blocks.
I get that. I guess my question would be, and maybe this is something that just has to be tackled once we redistrict it. If you end up redrawing a district that breaks up a precinct, how is that going to work for voting? I mean, are they going to have to redraw the precinct then too? So like to say, if you broke up a precinct and there were two different districts in one precinct, you'd have one area voting for one district, another area voting in the precinct voting for another district. I mean, you'd have to figure out how to distribute ballots then to people, or would you just redraw the precinct then so it's all encompassed in one?
Yeah, so the answer is that the precincts are all going to be redrawn this year anyway.
Got it. Okay.
Think about this because they're changing congressional districts, they're changing the state legislative districts, as well as the county water district and so on. So essentially every 10 years, the counties are required to completely redraw all of their precincts from scratch.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense because I was just thinking, how are you going to do that with ballots if you've got a precinct that's two different districts? But thank you.
Okay, so it looks like Joe has his hand raised, so I'm going to just allow him to ask his question here. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so could you bring up the one that shows the current districts?
Sure.
Okay, now look at the northern part of D, right? That's on the east side of the freeway. It really only touches the city. Well, maybe it's all along this boundary. So that makes the connection. I'm just not sure if this is in the city.
So yes, so for example, for example, the northern portion of District D does cross does connect via the other side of the 101 freeway to where it currently is. And so that would have to be connected essentially in order to keep the district contiguous.
Okay, so I noticed now it's maybe longer than what I thought it was. My concern is how much has to be contiguous, because this isn't the northern part that's in the green and the light blue. Most of that is industrial, right? There's only a little bit of residential in a lot of that area now. Okay, over over near Monterey.
So contiguity, as the law defines it, is just about geography. It doesn't really care about people. It doesn't really care about streets. It doesn't really care about anything except whether it physically touches or is connected to each other.
Okay, that answers the question about separation by another land use.
Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions?
I guess so. So Justin, this is Rick. Who ultimately makes the decision? Is this the city council?
So the city council has the final authority to pick and select the final map. We're required to do a minimum number of hearings. We're required to do a minimum amount of outreach and engagement. But ultimately, like the original selection, it falls to the council to make the final decision when it comes to which map is adopted.
And when is this to be adopted? By what date?
So the deadline for final adoption is April 15th, 2021. That deadline is set by the county registrars because they need a certain amount of time to process the map in order to draw in the new precincts so that they can hold the elections in the new districts this November or next November.
Right, because we have two, I think B and D are up for re-election next November.
Yeah.
Right.
And we could end up with a funny situation where two of them end up in one district, for example. Interesting.
And B and D will be up for election. We just don't know exactly where B and D will be on the map yet. That's sort of the question.
Yep.
Nick, did you have a question?
Yeah, maybe a question for both Dr. Levitt and thank you for Michelle as well. I learned a little bit more every time I have a chance to hear you guys present this. And I know many of in the community are really looking forward to the online tool. Is there an estimated date on when we'll be able to see the online tool up and running? And then a follow-up to that, if we could go to the online tool, Dr. Levitt, you had mentioned that we could start as a starter, actually plug in the existing districts. Can you just kind of walk us through very quickly, because we have a little bit of time today, Rick, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I just want to see an example of how we could take the existing districts using the tool to make some changes. Because I know there will be several questions once we all have a chance to get into to the body of the tool itself. But if you can maybe just kind of simply walk us through what that looks like and how it feels on the tool, that would be great.
Sure. So as you see, one of the options, we can start with a blank map, or we can start with the current council district. And we'll have the link to both options, of course, on the website when we get this tool posted. When you click through there, what it takes you to is essentially, and let me just getting this pulled up here and new share, is basically a map that I've drawn in the existing districts. You know, we hand drew this in to make sure it currently aligns with where our current districts are. And then same kind of thing that we did before, right? It starts in view only. If you know, after you set up your account, you can hit this make editable copy of the map. And basically, just like you created a copy of the blank map,
Okay.
As it processes, it'll create a copy of the current district map. Here, as it just saves it.
Mhm.
You will need your own account on Dave's redistricting tool in order to do this. But once you have this all loaded, all you need to do is, right now the districts are locked, but you unlock them by clicking on those little locks. And we'll make sure that the districts are not locked when we post the tool.
Okay.
And then you just kind of can paint. You select the district. You say, let's say we want to add this section to the green district.
Mhm.
Don't worry so much about the numbers. Unfortunately, this program only allows us to do the numbers, not letters. But we'll be able to fix that after when we process the maps for posting. And then you can just either click the precincts, that's the default way it starts you out,
Mhm.
or you can select the individual blocks by hitting block and then hitting clicking on one of the precincts, and it will kind of give you all of the different blocks that you can then select on an individual basis and paint in one by one. So you get exactly the area you want to add.
Okay.
And sometimes the background map goes off for some reason, it comes off. You can always just check this box to turn the background map on, and that gives you all of the streets and many of the businesses and other information about the location as you're adding areas to the map. Once that lock button is a great feature, because once you're done with editing a particular district, you can lock a district, so that way if you're working on another one, you can't accidentally select blocks from that area to add. So if I'm trying to add things to the purple district and I'm just selecting all of the blocks here, it lets me add the blue but not the green because it's locked. And so that's a great way to check yourself to make sure you don't make any mistakes if you finish district or finish drawing what you think a district should be.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to hopping on the map itself. Will this also come with a short, say, YouTube tutorial on this for all of the residents when they actually have a chance to click the link?
As of right now, we do have a presentation. NDC is working on creating a video to show you how to use this. I'll tell you the full story is that we pivoted on this online tool. We were originally planning on using a different online tool, but the vendor was unable to deliver. And so we've kind of been working with Dave's redistricting app for about 2 or 3 weeks now, just as kind of a backup because our original vendor just didn't come through. And so we're working on creating that video, but it should be out later this week.
Great.
Or next week, I should say.
Thank you.
And Nick, to answer your earlier question, we should have this up on the website by the end of the day tomorrow. It should be up today, but I want to just make sure all of the links work properly and we can get some instructions up there.
Thank you.
And once we get it up, we do have a list of folks who have asked to be kept in contact and updated on redistricting. So we have an email list and we'll notify them, but we'll also put it in the 411 and share it out when social media wants it's ready so that the greater community knows it's out there and can give it a try.
Thank you.
Nick, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Alex, I think you have your hand raised.
I do. Thank you very much, everybody, and happy Veterans Day. My question has to do with the federal and state law. Says that any representative of a district has to reside within the district, the only exception being congressional districts. So what are the new laws having to do with if a current representative finds themselves out of their district because of the redistricting? How much time do they have and what are the criteria thereof?
So if a member is moved out of a district because of a redistricting, then they can complete their current term in office. They just may lack the ability to run in the same district or in next time around, unless they move. Essentially, the redistricting cannot remove someone from office, because the district technically does not take effect until the first election held in the district is completed. So if districts B and D are up for election in 2022 and A and C are up for election in 2024, technically the old B and D exist up until that election is certified and the new representatives for districts B and D take office in January following the election. And then A and C would technically take effect actually in 2024 following the first election held in those new districts.
Thank you. Kind of the same, but different from last time.
But it's not that far different, and this comes up all the time if there are resignations or if there are replacement elections that have to be held. They're actually held in the old district lines up until the time when that district has held its first election in the new configuration.
Thank you.
Lori, you're on mute.
I know, I see it. Okay, Joe, I think you had another question.
Yeah, a little bit of follow-up on that. So if B and D are up for re-election, and we know that D is going to get, things are going to get moved around fairly dramatically, right? The old and the new districts could overlap. So when the first election is held for B and D, what happens with A and C if they overlap with the new B and D?
Well, so it's a very interesting question. Normally what happens is that in terms of actual representation, once you've had your first election in the new districts, people more or less will be contacting the new representative, regardless of which district that they live in. Although if the representative from District C resigns in 2022 or 2023, then that election to replace the member or the appointment to replace the member would technically be done in the old District C, not the new District C, up until the first time that new District C has an election. It's rare, but it has come up. In 2013, for example, a member of the San Diego City Council resigned. Her seat was not up for election until 2014. They held the replacement election for her in the old configuration of her district, not the new configuration of her district. And so just like when we switched to district elections, the districts sort of took effect over a period of 4 years as you went through the 2 election cycles. So 2 new districts technically take effect over that period over the course of 2 election cycles.
But doesn't that mean that some people could have 2 people representing them?
Well, and this is why the courts have recognized, for example, minimizing the voter shifted between different election years and preserving the cores of existing districts as potential criteria that you can consider when drawing districts, recognizing that major changes to the map could result in that kind of situation. As a practical matter, if you live in District D right now and you're moved to District A, in those 2 years between the last election, between the first election in District D and the first election in District A, I'm certain that you'll be able to reach out to your council person in District A, who will be your future council person. And many councils make statements to that effect, that from this point forward, following the first election, that they'll, anybody who lives in those new districts is welcome to contact their representative as their point of contact. But it does lead to some interesting questions if there is a resignation or someone moves out of the city and there has to be a replacement held or sort of sought after.
Okay.
Joe, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Rick, if I could just share one last thing before we wrap up here.
absolutely.
As Justin mentioned earlier, we are planning to bring some maps to the December 15th City Council meeting. It will be a public hearing with a time certain. That time will likely be 8 p.m., but we still have to determine that. And that means that the public hearing for redistricting will start at 8 p.m. So we really encourage you, get the word out. Please help us get the word out. We have received 2 draft maps so far from the community. NDC is evaluating those right now because they need to do the data on the populations in those districts, but we will be publishing them under public comment. And then once NDC has evaluated them, they will get published in the draft map section. And then NDC is going to put together a couple of maps that we will share along with the 2 we've received at the December 15th meeting. And really the goal with this is to give the community an idea of what they can look like. I think sometimes it feels a little abstract and people aren't quite sure where to start. And so we really want to give folks something to react and respond to. And hopefully that will provoke submission of more maps through January. And then we plan to come back in January, February with all of the draft maps received. NDC will present them and go through them. And then, as Justin mentioned earlier, we do have to adopt the final map before April 15th. Our goal is to get it adopted in March so that we aren't coming up right to the deadline. And the other important thing for everybody to realize is that these maps do impact the November 2022 election. So we need to keep that in mind. And they're going to be in place for the next 10 years. And when people ask why they should care, I remind them that, this is your opportunity to really have a voice, really get involved, and be able to participate in drawing your council districts in a way that you feel represents your communities. And it really impacts who can run and represent you for the next 10 years. So just thank you so much for your time this morning. And I think all know how to get a hold of me. I did put the redistricting email in the chat. And like I said, we're happy to help in any way that we can. This is really important.
And Michelle, are those presentations up on the website also?
Yeah, the one Justin presented today is not yet, but we'll put that up because it has the instructions, but they are up on our redistricting site, and I can put that in the chat too so people can go right there.
Okay, thank you.
So one
Barbie?
quick question, what's going on at the December 15th meeting again? What have we gone over on the December 15th meeting?
The December 15th meeting, we're going to present any draft maps that we've received to that point, along with a couple that NDC is going to prepare as examples.
Okay.
And it's really just an opportunity to show the community what they could look like. Because, the feedback I'm getting is that people don't really know where to start. It feels a little bit overwhelming. And so this will just give them something to react and respond to. And they might say, oh my gosh, no, that is absolutely not what I think these districts should look like. Or they might say, yes, they nailed it. That's the one. I think that's fantastic. Or maybe I want to tweak it slightly. So
I was going to say, just from the past, knowing that a lot of people get kind of put off that, important meetings sometimes happen in December, right in the middle of the holiday season, as long as there's more opportunity after that to continue to give input.
Yes.
I think
absolutely. This is really a thought-provoking attempt, if you will, because people, as we all know, everybody is inundated with information and life. We're figuring out what COVID looks like. We're figuring out how we work, how our kids go to school, how we feel about so many things, right? So there's a lot of really big, heavy things on all of our plates. And it would be really easy to say, this isn't that big a deal. But I think it's a little short-sighted because this lasts for 10 years. And so we're hoping to just get some input and really have the community have a voice in what these look like.
And I think this is really kind of, we pivoted a little bit because originally we were talking about waiting until January after the holidays. But what we really started hearing as we kind of went through the summer and into the fall was that people didn't, were really struggling with where to begin and how to even get a foothold here. And for many, back before the Fair Maps Act, before all the new laws came into place, oftentimes we would start with a couple of maps to spur conversation, just as a starting point, because it really helps people get a sense of, okay, there have to be changes and here's what it could look like. Unfortunate, or maybe I guess fortunately in a lot of ways, we do have this requirement that we do have to go out to the community to talk to them about communities and issues before we come up with draft maps. That's a requirement now in state law. But what it can do is it can also turn a lot of people off, because if they have to spend a lot of time, giving information without getting a lot of, kind of discussion starting, kind of, material to help spur that conversation, it can lead to less involvement or participation than we'd like. And so we hope that by releasing the maps earlier, about a month earlier than we initially planned, that maybe people will start to, react and respond to those maps over the holidays. And so by January, we can really have a good conversation about which of the options work and what doesn't work.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank Dr. Levitt and Michelle both for presenting. Good presentations. I'm certainly a lot more knowledgeable than I was before. And I'm looking forward to playing around with the maps and seeing what we can do. We're here, still 45 minutes left. Any updates, I guess, from anybody? Joe, Matt, Alex, any updates from the city, open space, or the Planning Commission? Joe has his hand up.
Okay, now I think you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, so the Planning Commission has met twice since the last time we met. As you recall, I sort of gave you a heads up that GEMCAR was on the agenda for the second meeting in October. The design review permit was approved 4-3 vote. It was a long discussion about the impact of parking for multifamily units or higher density units. And that's going to be an ongoing discussion for a long time, I think, until we resolve it. The first meeting this month was Tuesday of this week. It was really code cleanup for the most part. One of it was the inclusionary housing ordinance, and probably the biggest change or discussion on the change on that one is for the moderate rate homes, we lowered the price of the moderate homes to 110% of area median income. It was 120%. That has an impact of maybe making it so people lower in the moderate class will be able to afford it. Given the high area median income, that's a pretty high bar to reach for some people. Historically, we've always sold the BMRs at the maximum price. This will reduce that one down below that and not have an effect. The other code cleanups was there's a new trash enclosure law that takes effect, and that adds a bin requirement for organic waste. You have to separate it. That's going to cause an issue with businesses potentially over time, because your enclosure may not be large enough currently to add the third bin, but you have a while to make an adjustment or work through it. So you may want to check that detail as it goes to City Council for approval. And then there was a landscaping change that says all new landscaping has to be at the low end of the drought tolerant approved list, which I think we do a lot of it anyway, but this will push it all down to the lower end. And probably the most notable one that we talked about that is going to be difficult to do now is oak trees. Okay, they take a lot of water, right? And we're going to be forcing everybody to go to the low end of the drought tolerant due to our current climate conditions. Other than that, I'm open to questions.
Any questions for Joe? No? Alex, you have your hand up.
I do, thank you. Not much to report from the Open Space Authority. We've acquired a couple of more pieces of land totaling about 120 acres in Coyote Valley that we plan to add to our preserve that is growing from 380 acres to now it looks like it's going to be close to 5,000 acres by the time we're whipping it all together. Also, a little bit of progress on the El Toro Loop Trail. We have access issues, but we're also making some headway with the landowners. I don't know if you know or not, but on the side facing Morgan Hill, of course, the city owns that. But on the other three sides, there are 5 different owners that meet at the apex of. So it's nothing but fun dealing with the situation. But it's moving along at a snail's pace. And maybe in our lifetime, we'll see that, actually see the loop trail. The other thing I want to work on, report on is a project of mine that I is with the caste extortionists that have been attacking the city. They're all aware of the situation where a guy comes in, doesn't even visit the property, but nails you for thousands of dollars because you might have an issue with handicapped access. And I've had a fair amount of luck working with both our senator and our representative, and the representatives in other cities have taken it to heart. And there are going to be some changes to that law that's going to not allow them to, extort us immediately. If we have a time frame to fix it. They're arguing about how much that time frame should be, whether 90 days, 180 days, but it is moving along again as government at snail's pace. And there should be something probably in the next session, not this session, just so you know. I wish I had all the details. I've thrown a lot of details, and I've submitted what Nick, you've probably seen it before. All the requirements we felt are needed. And I used a couple of real estate attorneys as well as a land use attorney to submit those requirements. So there you have it. So there. Any questions of me on any of that? Anybody here besides me a veteran? Hey, good. Congratulations, Nate. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you both for your service.
Thank you all.
Okay, then. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Okay, Matt, any updates from the city?
Good morning, everybody. I think first and foremost, hiding out on the participant side is of this call is Brittany Sherman. She joined the City of Morgan Hill team effective on Monday. So welcome, Brittany. In the future, I think we should be pulling her over on the panelist side. And she may be representing the city on some of these calls moving forward. So it's great to have Brittany on. We're already working together. I mean, we're no strangers to one another. So it's great that we got some great synergy and already working on some things. And looking to partner with the chamber soon on some things, specifically by local industry roundtables. So we'll be coming back around to you guys to partner on some things. And if you don't want to partner, we're just going to go do it.
Well, Matt, we're looking forward to it, Matt. So I don't think you have to take the other alternate path. So.
Yeah, so we're excited on some stuff. I have my whiteboards full. Brittany's taking notes. It's great to have a partner in crime over here now.
I just promoted her also to panelist. I don't know why she's not popping up. We'd love to see her.
She probably has to log off and log back in.
Oh, maybe.
Sorry,
Brittany.
But one other thing, it's obviously taken up a lot of time from the city staff, not just economic development, but from public works. Has been the downtown Monterey Street lane reduction implementation strategy. We've held we've held 4 working group meetings, numerous public sessions on the implementation. There's a display up at the pop-up park that'll probably come down, I think, tomorrow. It's getting worn by the weather pretty quickly. We tried to protect it from the rain, but I'm not sure how good of a job we did. But we've been getting some really good feedback on the website. And we've sent that link out, and we will be writing a staff report and making our recommendations to City Council as to how to implement the lane reduction. So that's coming soon. That City Council meeting will be December 15th. So mark your calendar for that. That's going to be a long meeting. There's a lot on the agenda that day. It's our last meeting before the end of the year, and it's going to be a long evening, I think. One other thing, I think you all know, we extended al fresco through 2022. That was my recommendation. That if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing. So we're just trying to give businesses grace with, especially restaurants, grace to continue with the parklet and al fresco program. And we will be coming forward with some formal recommendations, I think, on what parklet designs we'd like to see people using moving forward. And we're waiting for those final designs and structural engineering pieces from AP&I in the very near future. And then Alex, on your topic of ADA, last week, the Silicon Valley Economic Development Alliance held a webinar on ADA compliance and how small businesses could prevent having a complaint against them. I did send that link to the chamber. I don't know if you got it out to your members or not, but I do believe there is a video recording of that program, and I can get you a copy of that to make sure that you have it. You're right. It's been a huge issue. Even when I was in the chamber side, we were working with local legislators trying to get them to put a fix in place. So you weren't just having immediate lawsuits and impacting businesses. So it would be great to see some movement on that. And then the last piece is one of the things that I'm seeing, and it's moving up on my target list, is our demand for existing office space is going up. That means you have businesses, small businesses, looking for 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 square feet of office space in the city of Morgan Hill, and we don't have it. So my job is cut out for me to try to figure out how do we get that type of office space built on a speculative basis in Morgan Hill, and convince the developer to build that type of office space. And if they build it, they will come. And I've talked to multiple users who are looking for space. And I think as people are migrating south, that demand is only going to increase. Because what I'm seeing is many people who live in Morgan Hill, they have their business and it's located north, and they want to bring it closer. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that trend is going to change. It's only going to increase. So we need to solve for that, and hopefully try to put more, I don't know how we do this, but more office space closer to downtown. That's at all possible, to create more kind of synergy with business and restaurant and retail in the downtown core. So that's my brief update.
Matt, are there any updates on Evergreen, or where is that at this point?
Yeah, it's a great question, Marby. I'm in constant contact with Evergreen and Rod Collins over there. The 7-Eleven, they're getting ready to open. It looks like it's getting closer and closer. I was told not till the first of the year, but it looks like they're moving a little bit faster than that. With the other projects, literally COVID hit them at the worst time. They were literally signing ground leases and getting commitments, and then COVID hit. So they've had to literally, and everybody pulled out. Well, not everybody. There's still the senior housing or the senior facility that's still committed in the northeast side of the lot. But we're working with a new hotel developer. I brought them a new hotel developer. The previous one pulled out. They're working on preliminary plans right now to get the hotel out of the ground. And the individual who I brought in, he wants to move fast. So we're hoping that he'll get, he's trying to use all the previous permits and approvals as much as he can without, he doesn't want to go back to planning commission and council. No offense, Joe. But he's trying to work within the parameters so we don't have to go back for any further approvals and try to get out of the ground first of the year. They've had some struggles on the retail side. Folks pulled out, they're rethinking it, and they're rethinking the southwest side of the property right now. That's where medical was supposed to go, and they're rethinking that, but I am trying to encourage them to be patient as I work on some other angles around medical.
Kind of two questions on that. One, I mean, I know when they came here, they were looking at businesses that, they could get in there as quick as possible, just, move it forward. But, the more I hear from people when I say, hey, they ask, hey, what's going in there? And I say, well, there was, talking about a Starbucks and this and that. Is there any way to, try to encourage them to kind of move outside the box so we don't have, the 20th Starbucks on Cochrane there?
Yeah, you're gonna get the 20th Starbucks there.
I know.
And you're gonna get the second or third Taco Bell there. Those are already, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned, those are already in the works.
Yeah.
Those are actually in planning right now, going through approval process. So you're gonna get, whether you like it or not, they're gonna get it. This town must drink more coffee than anybody. I've never seen so many Starbucks within a
yeah. And I think that's, just one of the things people said, why can't they get, sure, more coffee, but others are just something unique that we haven't already seen is just what I keep hearing people say. And I know it's tough. I'm not, going to judge them on that, but that's just sort of the feedback I get when people ask, hey, what's going in Evergreen? I said, well, there's going to be another Starbucks. And they're like, so I just, just wondering about that. The other thing too, I think Larry had brought up about Evergreen when we went over it before is just what's going on with the old Marie Callender's Forbes Grill, trying to encourage something there just to, work with whatever's going to go in at Evergreen, just having a restaurant there that, for that hotel. Is there any move on that front or? Yeah,
that's, I've been pushing out that piece of property to various folks. It's a big location. Nick's not, I don't know the exact square feet, but it's a pretty big restaurant location. So it requires a very experienced and probably a national chain to come in there and take it over. We've been pushing it out to some folks, haven't gotten any bites yet. Maybe it helps when there's a hotel there. And that's going to be down the road. We're also talking with some other developers about additional hotels, about where they may go in town. Some of our hotel stock is getting a little dated, so we need to make sure we're building new hotel stock. And it forces everybody else to come up as well. But yeah, it's on our, I drive by it almost every day, and it eats at me, as does Evergreen, not having stuff going on. It's good to see GSA coming out of the ground. They got their concrete poured. They got poured right before the rain. And then a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, Butterfield 5 had a broker's open, and that project, I mean, it's big, and those buildings are big, and they're going to look super cool. I mean, they look like kind of like these big monstrosities right now, but once they're painted and the glass is in, they're going to look really nice, from what I can understand. And there's already some interest in several of those buildings already, on large tenants coming in. So that's exciting. And Trammell Crow is trying to move on Redwood Tech 101 first of the year, at least on the south side of the property. Joe's got his hand up.
Yeah, Joe.
Unmute. Hey, Matt, you brought up the medical part of Evergreen. What's any news on the medical facility on Juan Hernandez?
Nothing I can talk about.
Okay.
And I'll smile.
Yeah. Okay, but that means there's activity, so hopefully it's.
There is activity and things are positive. It's always interesting, and I'm learning in this space to always temper your expectation, because nothing is final until somebody actually starts turning dirt and they put an open sign on the door. A lot of stuff can go wrong. So,
yeah.
But there's progress being made, and we're looking at that project, and not just a minimum project, but how big the project could actually be there.
Yeah, okay, so just if everybody doesn't remember, that's got a medical component, a significant medical component, and a residential component.
Yes, right now it's scoped at about 140,000 square feet of medical. And then I forget the residential unit count off the top of my head, but it's significant. And the current thinking is maybe the medical needs to be bigger.
Oh, okay.
So Matt, what kind of tenant interest is there in the Butterfield project?
Users who use big industrial space.
Okay.
And the brokers are excited, but they're not saying who either. So, but they had a good showing at the Brokers Open. They had probably 25 brokers come down. And when I say come down, a lot of them were the big hitters from San Jose, Silicon Valley area, farther north. But it's being driven by Rob Shannon, who he is one of the top brokers for CBRE in Silicon Valley, and he's driving the train on this one.
Good. Any other questions? Nick, anything from the chamber?
No, I don't think anything to add. I mean, Matt, when you talked about, I think there's several different bullet points right off the bat. I think we're well on board, and obviously we'll want to cooperate and participate as deeply as we can with those. So we'll set some time up to be able to kind of infuse what the chamber can do to help elevate some of those situations. But we're looking forward, obviously, to finishing up this year and moving into 2022 with a bright light.
Yeah, and I think we're getting together with the city on the big business roundtable early next week.
Great.
Okay, with that said, I'm going to give everybody some time back, and thank you everybody for attending today. Next month, we do have the lane reduction presentation, so that'll be interesting also. So thank you everybody, and have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Rick.